Okay.
How's the hotel business treating
He's wanting his own.
people coming to?
He's wanting his own.
Oh, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Okay, I'd like to welcome you out to the Planning Commission tonight, September 25th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Chairman Cox,
Here.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Here.
Commissioner Yates,
Here.
Commissioner Ferris,
Here.
Commissioner Dehan. Here. Five present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and just
I will lead us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda
I so move.
or complain?
Second.
Heather, just smile.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of last month?
I so move.
Second.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Moving on to item 6, public comments and items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of this agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name and address. We'll now open the public hearing or public comment at 6:02. Since I see no rush to the mic, we will close it at 6:02. Moving on to item 7, which is a continuation of public hearing. This agenda item has been requested that we push it forward for another month. We have to do on a public hearing a date specific, and so I'd request a continuance on that item. I believe that there's some members of the commission that would like to maybe give a comment or two.
I would. Do you know when this is actually going to come before the commission?
It should come next month. They're still working on the development agreement and going over some of those issues, determining.
I just wonder, is it important to have it on the agenda and then keep carrying it over month after month? If it's not ready, can we just leave it off?
Well, we could, but we didn't. We don't want to remove it
Okay.
and then have them be ready and then have to go through another public hearing, which takes at least 14
another
days
advertising
for noticing.
I see.
So if it was ready, which
I
we
see.
didn't find out it wasn't ready until
Okay.
today.
Anyway, the concern of the commissioners is that the amount of study time, because what we don't get is here's what we had last month, here's what we have this month, here's what we have next month, and we don't have highlights saying these are the changes. So we have to study the whole thing again.
Okay.
Okay.
So it wasn't changed at all from the previous month.
Right, and
Okay.
that's also why I wondered why it was, we passed it on the first go-round, second go-round as well. If it's not ready, it shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't be on the agenda. Just food for thought.
Okay.
other than we've publicly advertised it, and I don't think they want to do that again, so.
Understood.
All right,
Can it
so,
not be, can the agreement between city and the developer not be a separate one? And can we not approve this thing apart from that?
no, not without the development agreement, no.
So, but we don't see a development agreement here, right?
Right. Yeah, some of what's in the development agreement, as I understand it, are things that they need to provide, what the city is asking, what they're willing to do. In their situation, had a call today about the sewer. If you went into one of the sections, I think it was S3 or something in the sewer section, it doesn't really define what's going on there, but what they're doing is they're actually having to put in a pumping station, or they're going to have to take it all the way over to Bowman. And so that's part of what they're discussing, what it is that they're going to do to provide the sewer. So there are just some other things that they're trying to work out. Lauren could probably tell us, but where they're not here, I don't think it's probably appropriate that we go into the details.
Okay.
So entertain a motion to carry this, or can I just continue it?
We can just continue it.
Continue it till the next scheduled meeting in October what?
October 23rd.
October 23rd. Okay, moving on down to B. Okay, we're taking that off the agenda. This map has expired, and so we can't extend it if it's expired. And so that's what's happening with it. Moving on to B, the Municipal Code Amendment for the City of Ridgecrest, Municipal Code 20-3.23 fence, walls, and hedges. And so I'm sure there's questions on this. We'll have staff report. Now, this is a discussion item, and so what they want to do is they want to put together our ideas and suggestions, and then they will go back and have the legal language done, and then it'll come forth as a resolution, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so staff report.
So staff is bringing this to the Commission for consideration of the current municipal code and clarification for the section that on fences, walls, and hedges. The current code does not address security fencing such as barbed wire, electric fences, or razor wire. Code enforcement recently had a case where a barbed wire fencing was installed in a residential neighborhood. And at that time, we were made aware that our current code does not specifically address any type of security fencing. So here's images of that. So staff surveyed other municipalities and fencing codes and have provided additional language for you guys to consider. The idea would be for staff to seek established specific zones where security fencing is prohibited and where it's allowed.
So this becomes our discussion item, and we can hear from the public as well. One of the concerns that I have, and I'll share with you, is that in a commercial area, I think that it's appropriate to have some sort of security capability with height restriction. In other words, if you're going to have barbed wire or razor wire, we don't have it at a 3-foot level or a 5-foot level or a 6-foot level, because somebody could walk by it. I'm 6'1", you know, and so right now that's at 7 feet. And so that's one of the things. The other thing that I personally would consider is I don't really want barbed wire and razor wire in R1 and R2. And my biggest concern is for our law enforcement. If we're actually chasing an offender, I don't want the police department chasing somebody and running into a fence. We don't need to be injuring our first responders. I don't think that our crime level is so high that we can't call the police department, that we have to put razor wire. In this case, go back to that picture, would you, please? Okay. You look at this. This is on a 4 or 5 foot fence. I can't imagine that. And so if we're changing the municipal code, we might consider what we think would be appropriate. We've had fence issues for the two of you that weren't here for some of our fence issues. We had somebody that wanted to build a 6 foot fence right next to the sidewalk in their front yard. They were afraid of whatever, that they were concerned about. And the real problem is it becomes a safety issue because their neighbors on either side, if they're driving out of their driveway, they can't see anything coming down a busy highway. And in this case, it was on Las Flores, and until they're in the street. And so the city code says you can build this high on a side and rear fence. Then it tapers down to the front. And Lauren, I think that's 40 inches in the front, isn't it?
I believe
it's just over 3 feet.
3 feet.
3 feet 6 inches.
Yeah, 3 feet 6 inches. So anyway, in the front yard, and that should give ample security. I would suspect. And so I turn the time over to the commission if you want to discuss some of this, if you would like to see if there's anybody from the public that would like to. So let's turn it over to the public. If there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on the fence ordinance or razor wire or barbed wire and have an opinion, we'd like to turn the time over to you now.
Sorry, I couldn't have sit any further away. So, Peggy Breeden, 825 Sonia. I didn't see anywhere in here, if you abide by the rules and everything that you're proposing, can you build a fence inside a fence? That was my concern because it doesn't address it here, I don't think. And if I want to put a security perimeter around a specific area inside my property, can that be done? And I didn't see it addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners?
If we could make this part of the municipal code for only R1 and R2, if somebody needed to have some sort of variance, would that just come before the Planning Commission?
Yes.
If there was some relevant reason that they would need that.
And we have. Let me give you an example. On Balsam and Las Flores, across from Home Depot. Okay, there's a home there. If you'll notice, they've got a block wall out to the sidewalk on Las Flores, and it wraps around, and then they shorten it down right in front of their house on Balsam. And we allowed that only because the light from Home Depot kept them illuminated all night, and that was permitted. It was just kind of outside the norm. The one I had mentioned was also on Las Flores, and they just wanted a tall fence. And the concern, I'm sure that Solomon and Cecil remember that, and only one driveway is affected, but the truth of the matter is if you backed out, you could not see the traffic till you're in the street. And it became right. So my concern to our citizen that made her comment on a fence in a fence, I would suggest if we change anything, it'd have to be permitted, because it's one of those things that if we have first responders that need to respond for whatever reason, this is a double barrier, And if you're needing a double barrier, I'm not sure that they're doing, I'm not sure that it's a security issue as much as I want to make sure that you don't know what I'm doing. And I think that's probably a concern. Yes.
I was interpreting her statement as questioning whether or not someone would be able to do that based on the way this is currently written. Okay.
Well, and as I read the one that we have, and where Heather and Ron or the city would like to go, it doesn't specify whether you could or couldn't.
Well, you would not be able to in a residential at all.
As this written, because I
If you
read
look at Exhibit A, that would be the changes. So the number 1 on Exhibit A, that says that it would not be allowed in any residential zones except for the residential agricultural district.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies it, because I was focusing on 2, where it focuses mainly on the public right-of-way and the exterior property
Yes,
line.
number
but
2
1 would clarify that.
Yeah, number 2 would
anywhere
focus
within.
on all of the commercial. So number 1 would say not in residential, and number 2 would clarify where it was allowed in residential.
Be mindful also, it says barbed wire or razor wire in conjunction with a fence. So back to Peggy's question, in the aspect, if I wanted to do a wrought iron fence within a fence, but it didn't have razor, didn't have barbed wire, the big issue is razor and barbed wire, correct? Is that what I'm getting from the staff?
Yes.
Okay. And so if I wanted to put a wrought iron fence up in front of my door or whatever, or whatever. But it's really dealing with electrified, barbed wire, and razor wire. And so she had one other category there that came out, and that was your residential agricultural, wasn't it?
Yes. When staff surveyed other municipal codes to see what they had for security fencing and what they allowed, we did find in areas like Bakersfield, where there is a lot of agriculture, that they do allow it in places that allow agriculture. So to be consistent with that notion, we would recommend, if the commission wanted, that it be allowed in the residential agricultural districts where animals are allowed.
I have another, so where you said where animals are allowed, so would that apply to any properties where people have horses that are still within municipal? I mean, I know most of it's on the county line, but I'm not aware, are there any within municipal lines that would have horses where they need electrical fencing?
If it was zoned for it, then they would be able to.
Under this
Based on
agricultural
this.
district
Yes.
line? Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that applied to the animals too.
So what some of the farmers were finding, especially in Bakersfield, if you'll remember, it wasn't very many years ago when fuel prices went out of this world. So most of the farmers, they have their homes and their corrals and different things that are here, but their fields are someplace else. And so they were actually bringing their vehicles or tractors and stuff like that into a yard because they were being siphoned or cannibalized and things were stolen, and so that was their security measure that they did. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, so the suggestion of the city is to do those 3. None of it in R1, none of it in R2, but we will allow it in a commercial or residential agricultural.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what will happen to the existing security fences? So will we allow them to continue, or?
No.
So they might contend you didn't have a municipal code, we had that before that, so.
Yeah, and it's my assumption, we're spacing that on some other issues too, it's not specifying this, but this is a safety thing. And so what they're wanting to do is specify it so it can be enforced. They did go out, code enforcement did go out and they did remove this. Okay? But they don't have any ability to enforce it because they're wanting to correct the language. And so
if somebody were to challenge what Officer Booth already did, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't have it in there.
Right. So that's the recommendation of staff is no R1, no R2, to allow it only in agricultural residential. Any other feelings, questions? Public, any feelings and questions? Well, don't all of you rush up here. I mean, the gallery is almost full. All right, so I think the direction to staff is to go down the lines that you've suggested. And if you want to put that together in a resolution, we can sign it, send it up to City Council if that's what you want to do.
So can I clarify on number 2? In
Yes.
B, it says on top of a 6-foot high. Do you want that to be higher?
Needs to be a 7-foot.
Okay.
In a commercial, or even in a residential agricultural, 6-foot isn't sufficient for barbed wire. You walk by it and you get snagged. It's got to be a 7-foot.
Okay.
How would that work, though? I mean, if you had an electrified fence in a residential agricultural district, it really wouldn't be very useful if it was only 7 foot or higher, right? I mean, because if I'm thinking about horses in particular.
Well, what they're trying to do is keep animals from jumping over.
Okay.
For example, I use an electrified fence to keep my cows in on some of our grazing areas rather than go the expense of fencing it. And so all it is for their animals to keep them in instead of keeping us out. And so if they put a single wire, and in most cases, like out at the ranch, we do a 3-wire, and only the center wire is electrified. And so if you're on top of a 7-foot fence, I don't know many animals are going to jump over it anyway. But you have to specify it if we're going to do electrified, barbed wire, razor wire. Same thing if you had electrified fence and it was 5 foot or 6 foot, and you went by or you lost your balance and you went like this, or I think that it needs to be out of. You'd have to try to touch it.
Okay, so you just said you normally have the center one electrified, and I thought
Right.
that's how a lot of people have it. So then you would have to rework that all to where only the top one
Well,
is?
this is an ag property only. It's not R1, R2.
I understand that. I understand. I'm just
And
saying,
so
is it even going to be...
it's only a 5-foot fence. So
I'm just wanting to make sure if we pass this, that it's still, even though we're allowing it in agricultural, is it still going to be even useful for them, right? Because I've typically not seen them where they're 7 foot higher. I've always seen the electrical one where it's about at that 5 foot range for them. But you're saying there are fencing available, options available that show where you can have the electrical fence wire at 7.
Well,
I've never seen that. I'm asking.
I'm just suggesting is all I'm doing, is anything that we're putting on top of a fence. In other words, what we have now, we have nothing. We brought the agricultural in because Bakersfield has it.
Right.
So if we include it, okay, the question is what height, because she's coming back to B, isn't it B?
Yes.
Yes, but
And
section
saying
2.
it's anything on top of a 6 foot. So it'd be the same whether it's electrified, barbed wire, or razor. I'm suggesting we recommend 7 feet because then it's out of, say a person, some people's privy of not accidentally being grabbed by it. If you look at razor wire as it's curled, it'll hang out a little bit. So if you're walking by it.
Okay.
An animal's going to be 4 or 5 feet, maybe, depending on your horse. They're not going to be affected by it. If you bring it down to 5 foot, electrified is just to give you a buzz. It's not going to kill you. It's just going to alarm you. So, yeah, because it's only carrying 12 volts, by the way. So, at least for the cows. So she needs the recommendation from the commission, and then they will put it together with legal. So is that our recommendation? Do we need to vote on it? So that's our recommendation. Jessica, you still feel comfortable with 7 feet? Or do you want to specify an electric fence?
I would like to see electric actually specified, because I understand what Jessica's saying. If you have just one string, if you will, of a 7-foot electric, it seems like it's not going to serve its purpose in that, in what it was meant to do. Now, if you're going to put that on top of another fence, that makes sense. But if you're just going to do one string around property and have it at 7 feet, it doesn't seem like it's going to keep anything out or in.
Well, and I picture this as the same language. It's on top of a fence. What we're doing here is on top of a fence.
Okay. Okay.
It's not, we're not keeping cattle in because we're not doing ag.
Right.
You know, but
Right.
I just used it as an example. You know, it's a deterrent for animals. They stick their nose up or they, whatever, it's like, yeah, stay away from it. So
Okay.
all of this is on top of an existing fence.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that raised to 7 feet.
In that case,
Just
I have no
a
issue.
suggestion.
I agree in that instance.
Okay? So we'll send that back to staff to put together a resolution for us or the city council, recommendation from the planning commission, however you want to handle that. Okay, moving on to item 9, commissioner items and comments.
I'm sorry. I just real quick. I just
Sure.
flipped the page, and I want to make sure we're not in conflict here. If you look at what our existing one says in A, fences and walls behind the front yard setback alongside and rear yard property lines not exceeding 7 feet in height. So, are we going to be contradicting our current? If now we're saying it has to be over 7, in our original, what
We're
we have.
replacing it.
We're replacing it. So this is going to be gone
So
altogether,
left-
this entire ordinance?
Attachment 1 is what we have.
Okay.
Attachment 2, or Exhibit A, is where we want to go.
So I was under the impression Exhibit A is just saying we're going to add this to what we currently have. Because Attachment 1 is dealing with other things that we still need to keep in our code. But then we would have a contradiction.
You mean between 6 foot and 7 foot?
Yes, because it says in what we currently have our ordinance say we shouldn't have a fence exceeding 7 feet. And what we're voting to add on is saying it must
require
be
7 feet.
over 7 feet. So we'd be adding something in contradiction to our current ordinance.
Ask legal. The only reason I did that, if any of you, I have an office over on Station Street, and we were broken into a couple of times, and so I put up cameras, and I did put a 7-foot security chain link fence, and then put Razor on the top of it. And I did that specifically so nobody could walk by. I did the wrought iron fences in front that are 7 feet, but I did do the Razor. So that nobody could have an accident, and that's the only reason I'm suggesting it. It's from my own experience. So let's ask clarification from legal on that, please. Yes. Okay, good point, Jessica. Good point. Sure. All right, moving on to committee reports. Infrastructure didn't meet between the last meeting and this meeting. We meet on Thursday. Jessica, what other committees did you go to?
Well, I'm on Parks and Rec as well, but we also did not meet this month. We're basically at a standstill until we get further funding for some of these projects that we want.
Okay.
I, too, am on quality of life and economic development, and neither one met.
Okay. Cecil?
Neither one of my committees met either.
Solomon?
No.
So we didn't report anything, did we? Nothing happened.
You reported that we did not meet.
Yeah. So infrastructure meets on Thursday. You going to be able to be there, Jessica?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Commissioner comments? Commissioner DeHaan?
No, I don't have any comments tonight. This was the fastest planning commission meeting I've been to yet.
Mr. Ferris?
I think Solomon actually had a meeting that was quicker, but you're in good company.
Cecil?
I had a question about a property on North Norma. I don't know. I'm just curious. There was a particular business, not to call it out, but it's painted dark blue, and I just was curious. Did that come before the planning department? Did they get permission to paint that facility blue?
Doctor's office.
I didn't say where.
No.
No.
Okay, so how do we? Okay, how does that get addressed? Because it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Probably did that for advertising. I don't know. Lauren, are you aware? Is anybody aware of a city ordinance that says you can't paint your office or your building or your house, whatever color you want to do it?
Mr. Chairman, no, there is nothing within the municipal code that dictates design review. Some cities do have design review committees, and they'll have specific criteria for development that requires them to submit a particular, whatever they intend to do within that particular district, that it has to be meeting their criteria for whatever the nature or characteristics of that particular district might be. But the city does not have a community design district or a design criteria for what you might do to your structures.
So we have no type of appearance plan, so any of these businesses can just paint their facilities whatever color they desire.
No, the municipal code's silent on that issue of
Okay.
design review.
Okay, thank you.
So
I did
it
ask,
doesn't
I did
mean,
ask a lot. Then
it doesn't mean that it
has.
has to be that way.
Yeah.
So we could actually ask staff to see if there's a mechanism or an interest, because this would come back to code enforcement, but anyway, our
Thank you.
commissioners,
We do have one question.
no, let's finish this. Are we interested in asking staff to put in time to looking into some sort of Well, but if they're not altering the structure, they're not required to come in and do a site plan review.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of it because I think that each business needs to be responsible for those decisions, and then otherwise we have a giant homeowners association called the City of Ridgecrest.
Yeah, and that's where I would be, because I've known people that have done them fluorescent green just because you're going to see it, and then they'll go, "What is this?" Oh. Anyway,
I was just asking because I get asked a lot and I didn't have an answer. Now I have an answer.
Yep, there we go.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks. I think it was a great question too. Thanks for your input.
Stick out like a sore thumb.
Okay, future agenda items. Do we
I
have?
do have a question.
Oh yes, Solomon, the floor is yours.
Couple of months back, one property came for abatement, 230 South Sunland, and it was supposed to go into escrow for a sale. Otherwise, we were supposed to go ahead with the abatement. I don't see Officer Booth here, but do we know anything what has happened with that?
Do you have any information, Heather?
I do not. I can follow up and find out.
Yeah, it needs to be on our next agenda. Well, in fact, no, we abated it. If it wasn't done in 30 days, we abated it.
Yeah.
So but
We need
it'd
to
be
know.
nice to have a report on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that would be one thing that the commissioners would appreciate is action that we do take here. If we took a section either in the staff items or whatever and kind of tell us a follow-up at what's happened. Future agenda items, what's coming up, Heather? What are we facing? Red Rock is going to City Council, the next City Council.
I think that's about it.
Okay. Did we hear back? I know that the Navy didn't have any problem with the hotel. Did the FAA have a problem?
Well, the FAA isn't actually the regulatory body for that. So, but we are working with.
Why are they
them.
not the regulatory body?
Because it's actually Caltrans.
Well, okay. One of our conditions was the FAA, not Caltrans, and the FAA controls all flight traffic below 800 feet in a populated area.
Okay. But it's not. It's the California Aeronautical.
Okay.
Which is a department of Caltrans?
It is, yes.
Okay. Well, whichever authority, but probably would have been better to state that as a condition, rather than the FAA. But as a pilot, I'm required to maintain 800 feet over. I'm breaking the law. They can take my license, not the state of California. But anyway, just saying. All right. Any no other further agenda items? Anything that you would like to see us do as a commission?
I have one question for Mr. Carl. So there is maybe you are going to give an update on the existing projects. If not, I'll ask this question. Are you going to give an update on the existing projects?
I assume the commission will be asking me to respond on future and past project status reports.
Yes.
Yeah. My question is on, there is a self-storage expansion going on 1601 North Inyo. So do you know how that expansion is going on? Or?
I have not been monitoring that. I'd be glad to take a look and report back to the commission.
Because it looks like it's almost completed, so I was just wondering where we stand on that, on the approval process.
You're speaking of the self-storage
Ridgecrest
expansion?
Self-storage.
Yes. Yeah, I'll have to report back to you on that. I have not been monitoring that personally.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Culp, we're at staff items. Do you have anything for us, or Heather?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to report that we've been successful in obtaining successful bids for the paving of the senior parking lot. We had 4 bids for the project. The City Council, the last City Council meeting, awarded the project to Griffith Construction. Staff has issued a notice of award, a notice to proceed with an early start on the project. We've been speaking with the contractor in hopes that we can have him mobilized by October 1st. It looks as if he is going to be able to start at least the demolition portion of the work on October 1st. We have had a meeting with the senior center, talked to the folks there, and let them know what our schedule is for the parking lot work. And so October 1st, they're going to vacate the property and the operation for the senior center. And arrangements have been made for transporting the seniors out to the Inyokern Senior Center to have their meals out there. So very happy to report that we do have a project that we have launched, awarded. We're launching, and also happy to report that it came in under the estimated cost and within our budget. Also happy to report that we opened bids for the senior center renovation. It's a CMAQ, not a CMAQ, I'm sorry, CDBG project. It's a HUD-funded project that's administered through the county. We opened bids on that, and we have had the bids reviewed by both our consultant, Wildan Engineering, as well as the county. And the county has given us the approval of the bids and authorized us to go ahead and award the project. We had 2 bids on the project. One was PVC Plumbing and Mechanical, a local contractor, and JTS. And so we're happy to announce that the project. The bid amount is within our budget, and there will be no fiscal impact to the city. It'll be completely funded by the CDBG funds.
Who got the award?
It's PVC Plumbing and Mechanical has been determined to be the lowest responsible bid and approved and authorized by the county to be awarded grant funding through the CDBG program. So with the award, we'll be issuing a letter of award. We'll be establishing a schedule at that time. Typically, 15 days after the award, the contractor is required to submit his insurance and bonds and his schedule, and also whatever shop drawings may be necessary to review and approve prior to his ordering of materials. As a part of that, his schedule will be able to then inform the senior center what the contractor's schedule is for performing the work. So hopefully right off the heels of our pavement project, we'll be able to get the contractor in to be getting started with the demolition and the renovation work on the interior of the project. We've also got a notice from Caltrans today that they want us to proceed with the west side of South Down Street between Upjohn and Ridgecrest Boulevard. They want us to proceed with our environmental documents and get a field review started. We have made the FTIP for the project, and so which means that we're funded. We haven't got authorization yet to proceed with construction. However, by making the FTIP, it means that the monies are set aside, and we proceed with our end of the design, and then at the point of completing that portion of environmental and right-of-way acquisition, we'll be able to ask for authorization to proceed with construction, at which time the money's available and we're off and moving.
The plans came to the infrastructure committee a year or two ago, and the committee gave some suggestions or changes. Were those done, and have you brought it back to infrastructure to see the revised plans?
I'll have to refresh my memory on that, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, it's not fresh in my mind to be able to report to you.
The only thing that I remember off the top of my head was it was a no on the bulb outs, and I don't know if they were taken out of the final plan.
The plan does not show bulb outs.
Okay.
There is a school crossing.
Crossing, but that's where the
charter school
the bulb out was.
Yeah.
But you have a safe island in the middle, correct?
Yes, there's refuge in the middle, and there will be rapid flashing beacons for the crosswalk that will be activated by the pedestrian. There will be a speed feedback sign on that reach as well, 2 speed feedback signs, rapid flashing beacons for the crosswalk, and refuge in the center median.
Thank you.
The bulb outs that you're speaking of was originally prepared as a part of an application for an ATP, active transportation plan. For that wasn't successful. That application was not successful.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have other things?
Yeah, we've got an RFP out for doing the CMAQ project for it's West Dolphin between College Heights and China Lake. We've got an RFP out for the design and the environmental work on that. That'll be
Lauren,
funded by the.
Can you explain what is an RFP? I'm sorry.
It's a request for proposal. We're asking consultants to give us what they think the cost might be to design and survey design and any right-of-way acquisition for completion of improvements on that reach. So we'll be looking at those proposals, evaluating them the first week of October, and hopefully have a recommendation for award for that design then by the second council meeting in October. We've got some other projects, but I don't know if that I want to bore you with all the details there. Those are the ones that are kind of on the front burner right now. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I have one. A couple of years ago, the Planning Commission heard an item about Drummond in front of Murray Middle School, and we talked about ingress, regress. We talked about the barrier and fence, and we put K-rails in there. The city didn't have money, and the school district didn't have money. I guess my question is, did we forgive that, or is that something that they need to put in the future? What was the disposition of that? Because we had given direction what we wanted to have done, and that's not what was done. And I do see over there that they've done expansion beyond what they said they were originally going to do. So they have spent additional money, and so I'm just not sure where that sits with us.
I can tell you at my staff level, at my level, I've been asked by administrative staff to provide them with the plans that were originally called for the school to perform, the improvements that the schools required or asked to perform. And it's my understanding that administrative staff has been speaking to the school district about possibly doing those improvements. Now, I have not been a party to those discussions. I can just tell you that from my level, at my staff level, administrative staff has asked for those improvement plans to go to the school district to discuss with them.
So that hasn't been forgiven?
At my level, it has not. I've not been asked to forgive that, but I have been asked to provide administrative staff those plans such that they can seek some resolution to that issue.
Well, it'd be nice to either come to infrastructure or back to us where we gave guidelines. You know, for example, now that we've got the K-rails up there, is law enforcement having issues with kids jumping the K-rails? Because that was the concern this committee had. And that's why we wanted this high and then chain link on top of it. It'd be nice to have some feedback from law enforcement, just what they're facing over there now that we have both Burroughs and Murray Middle School and the traffic of picking up and dropping off, what issues they're running into, whether or not this is urgent to push this down the road, or it's just, you know, letting them phase that in. Not have to do it all at once, but a little here and a little there.
As staff might recommend that might be something that you could encourage to be on the infrastructure committee.
Okay.
And I think that might be the right venue to bring the officers or traffic officers on board and have them give you what their observations have been for traffic patterns.
And then Jessica can come and report to us, right? All right. Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So the only comment that I'd like to leave us with this evening is I'd like to appreciate our staff. And I know sometimes, you know, when we pull items or we move items around, one thing about the city is it's fluid. It's not stationary. So I appreciate the commissioners, their ideas, their concerns about their community, and I appreciate their effort and their willingness to be here and serve. So I thank all of you. Any other comments from commissioners? If not,
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
There is one additional item I'd like to
present
you with. The Kern COG has asked the member agencies to distribute information regarding Rideshare Week that's going to occur October 1st through the 5th. There is a Kern COG website. It's called commutekern.org. There's going to be entries for winning bicycles and other prizes. They want to seek pledges to participate in the Rideshare Week. What they're asking the member agencies and the populace to do is to, during that week, to some point, to either carpool, ride the bus, ride your bicycle. van pool. They're encouraging skateboarders. They're encouraging walking. They're encouraging taking the train or drive your electric car or hybrid. I have some handouts here to present to you. I'll also be presenting these at the Infrastructure Committee, but just for information's sake and letting the public know, KernCog has requested member agencies to distribute the request to rideshare during the week of October 1st through the 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And with that, I will close the Planning Commission meeting at 6:50.